during a family dinner with my son and his wife. Yes, apparently we've decided to play at being civilized human beings again after years of radio silence. I got a text from an unknown number. Always a great sign. It simply read, "Get up and go now. Don't say anything to your son." Naturally, I obeyed. Because why wouldn't you follow instructions from an anonymous number in this golden age of scams and nonsense? And yes, turns out listening was the best, worst decision of my life. 30 minutes later, the police were at their door. But we'll get there. Don't rush. You lot love the drama. Before we dive headfirst into my soap opera of a life, do the usual. Subscribe, leave a comment, tell me where you're listening from, preferably somewhere with decent weather, so I can be bitter about it. Now, picture me, stood at the sink, drowning in dish soap bubbles like some sad pensioner version of Cinderella. My weathered hands scrubbing Margaret's favorite mug for the third time this week, as if the porcelain held the key to marital resurrection. Same routine every night. One plate, one fork, one cup. Because nothing screams domestic bliss like a kitchen that's been turned into a shrine to loneliness. The place felt cavernous without her humming in the background, or nagging me about leaving newspapers everywhere. Now the papers just pile up silently, like judgmental ghosts. I dried her mug carefully and put it back on the rack, right in its sacred little spot. Because apparently I've turned into the curator of the museum of my dead wife's crockery. The fridge buzzed like an anxious bee, decorated with faded family photos clinging on for dear life under mismatched magnets. My eyes landed on one in particular. Rick's high school graduation. 17, grinning like life hadn't had the chance to slap him around yet. Margaret had her arm around him, before the arguments, before the money, before the silence. Basically before everything went completely pear-shaped. Then the phone rang. Loud, shrill, the kind of ring that makes you feel guilty even if you've done nothing wrong. My wet hands fumbled for the dish towel, and when I finally grabbed the receiver, my stomach dropped. The caller ID. Rick. For a moment I froze. A year of silence. The last time we'd spoken, he'd stormed out because I wouldn't fund his latest investment opportunity, which, if memory serves, was about as promising as betting your life savings on a horse called Three-Legged Trevor. Margaret would have handled it better, obviously. She always knew how to polish the family turds into something that looked like hope. Hello. My voice came out rough, like I'd been chewing gravel. Dad. His voice, that same shaky tone he used when he was a kid and broke something expensive. It's me. I gripped the phone tighter. My chest thumped like I'd run a marathon, which I hadn't, obviously. I barely run baths these days. Rick. I wasn't expecting. I know it's been too long. Way too long. I sank into the armchair Margaret had bullied me into buying, ergonomic, supportive. Good for your back, she said. Now it was just good for trapping me in my own regrets. The leather was smooth from years of arse-shaped loyalty. How are you, son? I'm good. Really good. Emma and we've been talking. We realized how much we miss having you around. How much we miss family. Family. Oh yes. That word. Heavy little grenade dropped into conversation. Family. The thing we all worship until we remember we don't actually like each other. I miss it too, I said, surprising even myself. Look at me, telling the truth like it's free. Then came the kicker. Dad, would you consider coming for dinner tonight? Emma's making that pot roast you always loved. We could talk. Really talk. Like we used to. I stared at the photo on the side table, Rick and Emma's wedding day. Margaret smiling, as if she'd single-handedly orchestrated world peace. Families find their way back, she'd always said. Time heals. All that sentimental guff. Tonight. My voice cracked like a teenager's. I know it's short notice, but Emma's already started cooking, and we don't want to wait anymore. We've wasted enough time. His voice wobbled with that boyish vulnerability, the same one that used to come out during thunderstorms when he was little. Maybe Margaret had been right. Maybe miracles weren't just for the Bible. What time? 7:30. I'll text you the address. We moved to Montclair last year. Montclair. Of course. Nothing says we're doing well like moving somewhere so expensive you can practically smell the debt in the air. But then Rick always aim high. I'll be there, Dad. His voice softened. Thank you for giving us another chance. When I hung up, I sat there clutching the family photo like it was a relic. Margaret's smile beamed up at me, and I swear I could hear her whisper, "It's time, Jonathan. Time to come home." Which was rich, considering she's the one who left me stuck here with her mug collection. The silence after the call felt different. Less like a tomb, more like a waiting room. I set the photo back and stood up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in ages. Tonight could be different. Tonight, maybe I'd get my son back. Upstairs, the bedroom still reeked of Margaret. Her perfume bottles lined the dresser like tiny glass grenades of nostalgia. Dust motes swirled in the light, taunting me with their lazy freedom. I opened the closet and pushed through the sad parade of everyday jumpers until I reached the navy suit. Still in its plastic prison. Margaret had bought it for Rick's graduation. "You need something proper for important occasions," she'd said, smoothing the lapels like a proud tailor. Well, here we were. Another important occasion. A family dinner, a second chance, and spoiler alert, the beginning of absolute chaos. I carried the suit to the bed and unwrapped it like it was some sacred relic, which, in fairness, it sort of was. That same suit had seen me through job interviews, anniversaries, Rick's graduation, and, of course, Margaret's funeral. Talk about range. Tonight, apparently, it would be dragged out yet again, this time for family reconciliation, otherwise known as let's pretend the past decade didn't happen. The shower's hot water worked overtime, loosening muscles I hadn't realized had been clenched since about 1997. As I shaved, my reflection looked back at me with hopeful eyes, which was deeply unsettling, because hope hasn't lived in this house for years. The face staring back was older, lined, and silver around the temples. The sort of face that makes you ask, when did I get so pensioner chic? Would Rick even notice? Would Emma? Or would they just clock me as lonely old man, probably smells faintly of sadness and dental? Margaret's perfume bottle still sat on the bathroom counter. Chanel No. 5. She bought it for herself every Christmas like clockwork. I touched the bottle gently, then pulled my hand back. Some ghosts you don't borrow from. Besides, Chanel was her thing. Mine was generic supermarket aftershave that stings like betrayal. Once dressed, I surveyed my reflection in the suit. It still fit, though a little looser, which I'll generously call refined rather than malnourished. I grabbed a bottle of aged whiskey from the cabinet, a peace offering, because nothing says please love me again like alcohol in glass form. My phone buzzed with Rick's text, 247 Elmwood Drive, Montclair. Can't wait to see you, Dad. Of course, he can't wait. Nothing like dragging your estranged father into your fancy postcode as an evening's entertainment. I booked an Uber. 8-minute wait. Plenty of time to second-guess my life choices. Standing by the window, I watched the familiar brownstones blur into shadows. Mrs. Chun from next door gave me a wave from her stoop, probably assuming I was heading to bingo night. I waved back like some tragic escapee. For a fleeting second, I actually felt lighter. Maybe, just maybe, tonight would change everything. Or maybe it would just confirm why I drink whiskey alone. 50-50 really. The Uber arrived precisely on time, which already made me suspicious. The driver was one of those overly cheerful types, commenting on the nice weather as if small talk could solve the human condition. As we pulled away, Brooklyn gave way to highways, highways to suburbs, and suburbs to manicured step-forward nightmares. The houses grew larger, the lawns greener, the driveways wider. By the time we crossed into New Jersey, I was staring at mansions so big they could have comfortably fit 6 of my houses, plus the cat Mrs. Chun pretends isn't hers. Montclair's a beautiful area, the driver chirped. Lot of successful folks out here. Visiting my son, I said, puffing up with pride and dread in equal measure. Lucky man, having family in a place like this. Lucky indeed, I muttered, while my inner monologue whispered, how the hell is Rick affording this? Drug cartel? Pyramid scheme? Did he finally invent an app that makes sandwiches? The car slowed outside a house that belonged in a glossy magazine spread entitled, Houses you'll never own unless you sell organs. Stone columns, manicured topiaries, a fountain. Yes, an actual fountain, spitting water like it had something to prove. 2 luxury cars, Mercedes, BMW, sat gleaming in the drive like smug metal trophies. "This is it, sir," the driver said, all chirpy. "Beautiful place." I fumbled with my wallet, hands shaking as I tipped him too much, because nothing screams insecurity like over-tipping an Uber driver. "Thanks. Have a good evening." The car door felt heavier than it had any right to be, like it was silently mocking me. My shoes, polished, but clearly veterans of harder times, clicked against the stone path toward a door, so oversized it could have doubled as the gates of Mordor. The motion sensor lights clicked on with theatrical drama, spotlighting me like I was tonight's reluctant entertainment. Before I could even press the brass doorbell, the oak door creaked open. A middle-aged Hispanic woman stood there in a crisp black dress that screamed professional housekeeper. She smiled warmly, but I caught a flicker in her eyes. Concern? Warning? Gas? Hard to say. Gone in a flash. "Mr. Miller," she said kindly. "I'm Maria. Mr. Rick and Miss Emma are so excited you're here." Lovely. My own son had outsourced my welcome to staff. Very Downton Abbey, if Downton Abbey had been set in New Jersey. The foyer nearly knocked me over. Marble floors, sweeping staircase, chandeliers. The sort of place you see in films where the rich villain strokes a cat. Real flowers everywhere, not the dusty fake ones I had at home. Even the air smelled expensive. "Dad." Rick's voice boomed from somewhere inside. His footsteps echoed as he strode into view, looking like he'd just stepped out of a catalog for successful sons who make you feel inadequate. Expensive suit, perfect haircut, teeth, so white I was briefly blinded. When he hugged me, it was desperate. Clung too long. Like he was worried if he let go, I'd evaporate. Which, frankly, given the day I'd been having, wasn't entirely off the table. "You look great," Rick said, stepping back to inspect me like I was a second-hand car he wasn't sure about buying. "Really great." Yes. Great. That wonderful elastic word people use when they mean better than expected for someone your age, or not dead yet impressive. Emma floated into view then, and I do mean floated. She materialized like some elegant apparition in a silk dress that probably cost more than my car and was definitely ironed by angels. Her makeup was flawless, her jewelry subtle but obviously bankrupting, and her smile rehearsed enough to qualify as theater. "Jonathan," she purred, kissing my cheek, drowning me in perfume that screamed wealth. "You look wonderful. We're so happy you're here." Wonderful. That's twice in 30 seconds. Either I'd won the genetic lottery, or they were laying it on thick enough to drown me. I smiled back, trying not to choke on the scent of whatever flower they'd ground into liquid form for a perfume. "This place is incredible," I blurted, genuinely overwhelmed by the fact that my son was apparently starring in a property magazine spread. "How do you?" "Real estate," Rick interrupted, laughing too brightly. Real estate. The magic word for don't ask too many questions. Something about his tone made me pause, but Emma was already looping her arm through mine with the kind of grace that comes from years of Pilates and probably a personal coach called Sven. "Maria, could you take Mr. Miller's coat?" she ordered. I handed over my jacket, my best jacket, though in this palace it looked like something scavenged from a charity shop clearance bin. Maria accepted it with another of those kind but slightly haunted smiles before disappearing into what was probably a coat closet bigger than my entire flat. "I brought this," I said, proudly producing the whiskey I'd selected so carefully. My peace offering. Rick's face lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Dad, this is fantastic. You shouldn't have, but I'm glad you did." He clapped my shoulder with a little too much enthusiasm. The kind that says, "Please don't ask about my finances." "Emma's been cooking all afternoon," he added, like this was a Michelin star announcement. "She remembered how much you love pot roast." How did Emma know that? We'd shared maybe 3 meals in 5 years, and I didn't recall ever giving a TED talk on my meat preferences. But her smile was so blindingly warm, I shoved the thought aside. "You're too kind," I muttered. "Family takes care of family," she replied smoothly. which was rich, considering last year Rick asked me for money and then ghosted me faster than a dodgy Tinder date. Rick led us toward the dining room with a stride that screamed, "I own this place. Stop asking questions," while Emma steered me like I was some fragile old relic. Maria had already evaporated into the background, leaving us to play out this perfect Hallmark reunion tableau. The dining room itself was straight out of a period drama. Mahogany table set for 4, china plates glittering under the chandelier, silver polished, so brightly I could see my confused face reflected back at me. The smell of pot roast wafted in from beyond the swinging kitchen doors. A kitchen, I assumed, roughly the size of my entire block. "This is beautiful," I admitted, because lying felt redundant in the face of mahogany this glossy. Emma beamed like she designed the entire house herself. "We want tonight to be special. We want to start over, Jonathan. All of us." Rick pulled out my chair with the ease of someone who'd clearly practiced looking rich. I sat, oddly touched, and found myself hoping Margaret could somehow see this. Her boy, successful, smiling, playing at family. Maybe she'd be proud. Maybe she'd even buy this fantasy. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier, napkins folded into origami peaks, cutlery lined up like a military parade. I barely knew which fork to breathe on, let alone use. "Incredible," I whispered, running my fingers along the polished edge of the table, half expecting to find my reflection whispering back, "You don't belong here." "Only the best for family reunions, right, Dad?" Rick said proudly. Emma slid gracefully into the chair at my left. Rick claimed the seat at my right. The arrangement felt deliberate, like I was being placed center stage at some family intervention disguised as dinner theater. Maria reappeared, silent as a ghost, carrying appetizers that looked like modern art. Little sculptures of food no one actually wants to eat, but everyone pretends to enjoy. "Let's start with your whiskey," Rick announced, already cracking open my offering like it was his idea. The amber liquid glowed in the light as he poured generous measures into glasses that were probably worth more than my pension. "To family," Emma declared, lifting her wine glass with such flair I half expected applause. "To forgiveness and fresh starts." "To Margaret," Rick added, voice catching slightly. That one landed. The whiskey burned its way down my throat, warm and sharp. Margaret always said alcohol loosened tongues and hearts in equal measure. Well, judging by the size of the pour, tonight's tongues and hearts were about to fall right out. And somewhere deep down, I started to wonder what Margaret would have thought of all this. This luxury, this show, this theater of family. "Tell us about the restaurants," Emma said, eyes locked on mine, as if this was the cue for Act 2. Emma leaned forward with that kind of interest people usually fake when you're telling them about your stamp collection. "Rick says you built an empire from nothing." Empire. Right. If by empire she meant 7 mid-range restaurants and a permanent overdraft, then sure, call me Caesar. "Empire's too grand a word," I muttered, taking another sip of whiskey. God knows Rick was pouring it like he was trying to drown me. Just hard work and faith in people. Margaret always said, treat employees like family, customers like friends. "Don't be modest, Dad," Rick said, topping me up before I'd even noticed my glass was empty. Of course he did. Nothing says family reunion like assisted alcoholism. 7 locations now. That's impressive by any standard. 7. He'd been keeping count. Somehow, that little detail landed like an emotional punch. My son actually noticed. Maybe he did care more than I'd realized. Or maybe he just Googled me between mortgage fraud seminars. Hard to tell. Maria arrived with soup. Lobster bisque in porcelain, so delicate I was afraid to breathe on it. Her hands were shaking as she set it down, which made me wonder. Was she just nervous, or did she know something I didn't? Spoiler, I didn't like either option. "Do you ever think about retirement?" Emma asked, carving her bread with the precision of a surgeon who was about to charge me £5,000 an hour. Slowing down a bit? I gave the diplomatic answer. The restaurants keep me busy. Margaret and I built it together. Translation. I'm not planning on giving up the only thing keeping me sane, just so you two can sell it and buy a 3rd holiday home in Tuscany. Rick and Emma exchanged that look, The kind married couples give each other when they've already had the conversation about putting you in a home. I pretended not to notice. Alcohol helps with that. Emma's hand brushed mine briefly. Her fingers were cool, which is a polite way of saying ice cold. But you can't work forever, Rick pressed, his voice all soft concern. Have you thought about succession planning? Legal arrangements for the future. Ah, there it was. The inheritance chat, dressed up in lace and gravy. One day at a time, son, I said. Which is dad code for, stop measuring me for my coffin. I'm still chewing my pot roast. Speaking of which, Maria reappeared with the main course. Pot roast. Margaret's recipe. Exactly Margaret's recipe. Which was touching, yes, but also mildly terrifying. How had Emma known? We'd barely eaten together 5 times in our lives. And suddenly she was channeling my dead wife like some budget medium. This is perfect, I told her, and I meant it. Perfect, but unsettling. Like when someone knows your Netflix password without asking. Emma smiled. Her face stretched tighter than a politician at a tax audit. I wanted tonight to be special. Family takes care of family. Ah yes, family. Also known as the people most likely to poison your soup. Rick launched into a monologue about his real estate ventures, which somehow managed to be both boring and suspicious. Emma, meanwhile, was basically conducting an investor Q&A session about my restaurants. Profit margins, property values, staffing models. Honestly, I half expected her to pull out a PowerPoint presentation. The room grew warmer. My head lighter. Whiskey. Yes, but not just whiskey. Rick checked his watch when he thought I wasn't looking. Emma monitored my glass like a hawk. Maria dropped a fork, the loud clatter echoing across the marble floor like a warning shot. Something was off. My gut knew it, but my brain was too soused to join the dots. At some point, I tried reaching for my phone, babbling about the new Queen's opening. Margaret would have been proud. The community had loved it. Then the phone buzzed. Unknown number. Local area code. Completely foreign digits. Restaurant emergencies? They came from Miguel, Sarah, Tony. Not this. It buzzed again, harder this time. Rick leaned in, with concern, so exaggerated it could have won an Oscar. Everything all right? Unfamiliar number, I muttered, shielding the screen like I was cheating on a maths test. The message popped up in brutal capitals. Stand up and leave. Now. Say nothing to your son. My blood froze. The whole elegant dining room tilted sideways. For a split second I couldn't tell if it was shock or the whiskey laced with God knows what. I read it again. Same words. Same command. Emma's voice floated in like it was coming from another dimension. Dad, you look pale. Are you all right? I forced a smile, slid the phone back into my pocket, and lied through my teeth. Fine. Just the rich food hitting me harder than expected. But I wasn't fine. Oh no. Because someone out there knew exactly where I was. Someone who had my private number. And someone who thought I needed to be warned urgently about my own family dinner. Perfect evening, my arse. The whiskey glass caught the chandelier's light, glowing like liquid amber, while my hand trembled just enough to make me look like a man auditioning for Alcoholic of the Year. 2 glasses. That's all I'd had. Normally, I could down 2 without so much as a hiccup. Tonight, I was swaying like a pensioner on a cruise ship buffet line. Maybe some water, Emma cooed, already signaling for Maria like I was a misbehaving toddler. Rick's eyes narrowed. You sure you're okay? You went completely white there for a second. Thanks, son. Nothing says comfort like being told you look one faint away from a coffin. I'm sure I lied. Funny how easy lying becomes when your whole evening feels like a badly written crime drama. Just need to excuse me for a moment. Bathroom. Rick's smile was all teeth, no warmth. Second door on the left. We'll wait for you. Maria's bringing dessert. Lovely. Nothing like a family death watch to keep the evening light. I stood carefully, testing my balance like I was on trial for drunk walking. The room tilted, but I managed to pass for sober enough. I headed for the hallway, Rick and Emma whispering behind me in tones that suggested they were planning either a funeral or a surprise party. Same difference. The second door on the left was, indeed, a powder room. But my gut, and that text, told me to keep walking. Straight ahead. Toward the kitchen. Toward answers. Or, at least toward fresh air not marinated in betrayal. Maria was at the sink, washing crystal glasses with the dedication of someone trying very hard not to notice me sneaking through like a burglar. She didn't look up, didn't acknowledge me, just scrubbed at those glasses as if her life depended on it. Her shoulders tightened when I passed. Translation. She knew something, but survival meant pretending I was invisible. The back door loomed like salvation. Beyond it, freedom. Or, at least a lawn manicured within an inch of its life. I slipped out and motion sensors flared to life, lighting my escape like a scene from The Great Escape, middle class edition. Shoes sliding on the dewy grass, I half jogged to the back gate. My phone weighed down my pocket like a guilty conscience, buzzing with that mysterious warning. The gate creaked open onto a quiet residential street. Mansions everywhere, smug as hell, hiding secrets in their basements. I didn't care. I pulled out my phone, ordered a ride 1 block away, because nothing screams subtle like fleeing your son's mansion in an Uber. 5 minutes until salvation. Or paranoia. Or both. Margaret's voice echoed in my head. When someone warns you about danger, listen first and ask questions later. So I listened. I waited. Uber's headlights cut through the darkness like divine intervention. I got in the back seat, muttered my Brooklyn address, and immediately dialed the number that had detonated my evening. It rang twice. A voice answered. Careful. Flat. Neutral. I hoped you would call this number. Who is this? My voice sounded rougher than a pub carpet. Why did you warn me? I cannot reveal myself. But you were in immediate danger tonight. I laughed. Hysterically. The sort of laugh you get when life's become so ridiculous even despair has a punchline. That's impossible. I was having dinner with my son. A pause. Too long. Too careful. Then, your son owes $2.3 million to people who break bones when payment is late. The Uber driver glanced at me in the mirror, probably wondering if he'd picked up a soap opera monologue. I sat frozen. That's impossible, I said again, weaker this time. Like a man arguing with gravity. Your son borrowed against everything to fund gambling debts. Underground casinos. High-stakes poker. Sports betting with organized loan sharks. The voice stayed calm. Like reading a shopping list. 2 weeks to pay. Or face serious physical consequences. My free hand clutched the door handle, as if flinging myself onto the motorway would make this all less insane. Outside, Montclair's perfect lawns zipped past, neat hedges, posh homes, all covering rot underneath. I croaked out, even if that were true, what does it have to do with warning me away from dinner? Silence. Then, colder than the whiskey in my veins. The whiskey you brought tonight contained zetrulum. Apparently, zetrulum, the charming little garnish in my whiskey, multiplies alcohol's effects by 5. 5. Which explains why 2 glasses had left me feeling like I'd downed a bottle, and was now auditioning for Britain's Got Hangovers. It also explained why I'd suddenly been so chatty. Business details I normally guarded like state secrets, out of my mouth faster than Emma could fake another smile. Then the memory hit me. Rick's oh-so-urgent insistence that I open my own gift immediately. Emma's subtle, hawk-eyed monitoring of every sip. Their creepy little tag team act of topping me up before I even noticed my glass was empty. Oh yes, a real family reunion. If your family tradition is fraud by intoxication. Legal documents were prepared in advance. The voice on the phone droned. Relentless as a tax auditor. Complete transfer of your restaurants. Power of attorney. Your son in full control. The only thing missing was your signature. Of course it was. Because nothing screams family bonding, like slipping dad a drug, stealing his life's work, and leaving him with nothing but a cardigan and a bus pass. The Uber driver stared straight ahead, practicing the art of pretending not to notice his passenger quietly unraveling in the back seat. A true professional. I asked the obvious question. How do you know all this? Doesn't matter, the voice said. What matters is you escaped before signing. Oh, well, cheers for that. Just another Tuesday, nearly drugged into legally giving away my entire existence. No big deal. The voice kept talking about how Zetrulum plus alcohol causes memory gaps. Perfect for conning Dad into thinking he actually wanted to give up 7 restaurants and 40 years of his life's work. Lovely. My brain replayed the evening with new subtitles. Rick's twitchy energy, Emma's too perfect kindness, all those questions about retirement. They weren't worried about my cholesterol. They were measuring up my grave. My son wouldn't, I started, and then stopped. Because yes, apparently, my son bloody well would. The bedtime story boy had grown into the sort of man who'd slip roofies into his father's Glenlivet for a quick payday. Congratulations, Jonathan. Stellar parenting. They gave him 2 weeks, the voice continued. That deadline is in 11 days. Because apparently this dinner wasn't just about family reconciliation. It was about loan sharks. Literal ones. People who rearrange knees when the bill isn't paid. I croaked out, "Why are you helping me?" Because what they planned was wrong. Because you deserve to know the truth. How noble. Mystery Samaritan on the line. Saving gullible old dads from their scheming offspring. Where were you when I let Rick borrow money for his startup? Then it hit me. Maria. Of course. Her nervous movements. Her refusal to look me in the eye. Her Oscar-worthy impression of Switzerland while I crept past her in the kitchen. She knew. She'd chosen conscience over keeping her paycheck. Maria, I whispered. Lightning bolt. Don't thank me yet, the voice said. They'll realize you're gone soon. Desperate people get dangerous. Fantastic. My son was officially in debt to the mafia, and now I was on the hit list for leaving the dinner table. Exactly the retirement Margaret always dreamed of for us. The Uber hummed along, soft jazz trickling through the speakers, while I discovered my life was in ruins. 3 missed calls from Rick lit up my phone. Oh, bless him. Probably still pretending to be the concerned host, pacing outside the bathroom door, wondering why Daddy hadn't emerged to sign away his empire. Protect yourself, Maria urged. Change locks. Move assets. He knows your every routine. Which is brilliant, because nothing says safety like realizing your only child has memorized your vulnerabilities like a burglar casing the joint. The driver caught my eye in the mirror. Sir, you doing all right back there? Oh, absolutely, mate. Just discovered my son tried to drug me into bankruptcy while I was eating pot roast. Happens all the time. I didn't answer. Maria's voice filled the silence. Be careful. Your son has 11 days to find $2.3 million. Desperate choices, desperate consequences. And then she was gone. Just me, the jazz, and the fact that my entire family had exploded in one evening. Rick texted, Dad, where are you? We're worried sick. Worried sick. Yes, I'll bet. Sick because his little performance had collapsed faster than a cheap souffle. I deleted the message. The man who typed it wasn't my son. He was just a very expensive mistake in a tailored suit. The Uber driver cleared his throat. Sir, we're approaching the Brooklyn Bridge. Still want me to take you to the original address? Through the windscreen, Brooklyn glittered, shabby, familiar, safe. But on my phone, Montclair was still waiting. The mansion. The betrayal. The son I used to know. For the first time in my life, I had to choose, protect myself or walk back into the fire and try to protect what was left of my family. Brooklyn promised safety. Montclair promised answers. And me? I just wanted Margaret's ghost to pour me another drink and tell me what the hell to do. Safety, apparently, felt like cowardice now. Because why choose peace and Netflix in Brooklyn when you can march back into the murder mansion like some budget Shakespearean tragedy? I pulled Margaret's wedding photo from my wallet, edges frayed from years of clutching it whenever life decided to slap me round the face. There she was, smiling as if marriage to me hadn't guaranteed 40 years of burnt toast and late-night restaurant emergencies. She never backed down from anything difficult, taxes, dodgy landlords, or me forgetting anniversaries. No, Margaret always stood her ground. Which meant, apparently, so should I. You wouldn't run, I whispered to her picture. Which is mad, really arguing with laminated paper in the back of an Uber. But grief doesn't follow logic. Everything all right back there, sir? The driver asked, his eyes darting up in a rear view. No, mate. My only son just tried to poison me, and I'm currently debating morality with a photograph. But otherwise, living the dream. I straightened up, chest doing its best impression of a steel beam. I need to make a phone call. Then we're changing destination. My hands trembled as I dialed 911. 2 rings. Emergency services. What's your emergency? My family is attempting to poison me for money. Even saying it out loud sounded like I was workshopping a soap opera plot. Next week on, as the wheel turns, the dispatcher fired questions faster than a machine gun. Poison type? Number of suspects? Weapons? I answered like I was back in a boardroom presentation. Calm, detailed, efficient, conveniently forgetting I'd nearly been conned out of my empire because I can't count glasses of wine. Officers are en route. 20 minutes, she said. Sir, I strongly advise you not to return. Of course. Safety. Sensibility. Logic. Things Margaret would have respected. And yet, there she was on the photo, giving me that look, the one that meant, Jonathan, stop being pathetic. So naturally, I ignored actual police advice. I hung up, leaned forward, change of plans. Back to Montclair. The driver grimaced. Sir, maybe think this through? This isn't rash, I said, lying through my teeth. Sometimes you have to choose between being safe and doing what's right. Or, in my case, between staying alive and walking into my son's live-action crime audition. The return trip felt different. The first time, street lights had illuminated confusion. Now they lit up my spectacular stupidity. Each mile was a countdown to confronting Rick, my flesh and blood, my legacy, and apparently my would-be assassin. Margaret's voice whispered in my head. Family means telling the truth, even when it hurts. Yes, darling, but usually it's you're drinking too much, or your new haircut makes you look like a sheepdog. Not our son is a criminal mastermind in a polyester suit. 20 minutes later, Hill Street. Police cars crept past, lights off, skulking like predators. My heart hammered. This was happening. I was about to destroy my family, or what was left of the rotting carcass. Wait around the corner, I told the driver. This might take a while. Walking up the driveway felt less homecoming and more voluntary execution. The mansion looked perfect, polished. A glossy magazine cover stretched over a rotting core. The doorbell chimed, each note screaming, "You're an idiot. You're an idiot." Footsteps thundered to the door, far too quick for casual concern. Rick yanked it open, wearing an expression that flickered between relief and suspicion like a faulty light bulb. "Dad, where have you been?" "We were worried sick." "Ah yes, the worried sick routine. Academy Award material, that." "Sorry, son," I said, mustering fake contrition. Needed some fresh air. Felt dizzy after all that rich food. Dizzy. His eyes narrowed. "You were gone half an hour. Emma thought something happened." "Yes, something did happen. I discovered you're a psychopath in a slim-fit shirt. Time got away from me. Lovely neighborhood you've got." I smiled thinly. Emma appeared, dress wrinkled, mask cracking. "Jonathan, you gave us such a scare." "Oh, darling, save it. The only thing trembling harder than your hand on my arm is your Botox." "Much better, thank you," I replied sweetly, letting her guide me back in with a grip like a vice. The foyer had shrunk since last time, or maybe betrayal makes ceilings lower. Every chandelier crystal glinted with the shame of blood money. "Perhaps too much wine," Emma said, brittle laugh echoing. "Let's get you some water." "Yes, actually, I think I'll sit back down in the dining room," I said deliberately, planting myself like a judge at sentencing. Rick and Emma exchanged a glance thick with meaning. Rehearsed lines, flubbed delivery. "Of course, Dad. Whatever you need." "Yes. Whatever I need. Preferably antidote, divorce papers, and a flamethrower." The dining room looked suspiciously tidy when I returned. The kind of tidy that screams, "We just shoved evidence into the nearest drawer. Please don't look." The papers that had cluttered the table earlier had magically vanished. Funny that. Maria flitted between kitchen and dining room, moving like someone trying to look busy while quietly having an existential crisis. Same Maria. Same. I slid back into my seat at the head of the table. King Lear auditioning for Most Betrayed Parent of the Year, while Rick and Emma part themselves at either side, like two badly disguised vultures. The crystal glasses were gone, the plate stacked, but the air? Oh, the air crackled with enough tension to power the chandelier Emma pretends she paid for. I hope you don't mind, she said carefully, smile tight as her facelift. But we cleaned up a bit. Didn't want to leave Maria with too much work. Oh, how thoughtful. Nothing says family like hiding forged documents in the cutlery drawer. Rick drummed his fingers against the mahogany. A childhood habit. Back then it meant, Dad, can we have ice cream? Now it meant, Dad, please sign away your empire so I don't get kneecapped. So Dad, he asked, all casual menace, feeling completely recovered? No more dizziness or confusion. Clear as a bell, son. A bell being repeatedly smacked with a hammer. But yes, crystal clear. Fresh air worked wonders, I said, smiling blandly. Emma leaned forward with that tone people use when trying to euthanize a family pet. Rich meals can affect people differently as we get older. Perhaps next time we should plan something lighter. Next time. Adorable optimism. As if there'll be a next time once you've successfully slipped me a chemical cocktail strong enough to fell a rhino. Maria appeared with water, her hands steady enough until they weren't. A tiny tremor as she set my glass down. Noted. Loyalist in the ranks. Rick glanced at his watch, subtle as a neon sign. Whatever deadline was looming, it was getting closer. Well, he said brightly, voice cracking like puberty came back for a second round. Since you're feeling better, maybe we could continue our evening. Emma was looking forward to more conversation. Absolutely. Nothing screams relaxed family chat, like a murder attempt sandwiched between dessert courses. Rick suddenly leapt up and made for the liquor cabinet. Dad, let's have one more toast before the evening ends. Ah, there it was. The final toast. Shakespeare would be proud. His hands trembled slightly as he poured. I watched, eagle-eyed, while he lingered over my glass, extra generous, extra cloudy, extra suspicious. His own glass? Barely half full, clear as a nun's conscience. You know, I began casually, folding my hands like I was about to read bedtime stories. I want to tell you about the day you were born. Rick stiffened. Dad, that's sweet, but maybe we should toast first. Whiskey doesn't taste as good warm. This is important, son. I leaned back, playing the role of sentimental old fool to perfection. Your mother was in labor for 14 hours. Longest day of my life. Emma's smile grew tighter than her Spanx. Jonathan, the whiskey will lose its flavor if we wait too long. Can't we drink and listen at the same time? Patience, darling. If I'm about to down poison, I'm at least dragging you through my family anecdotes first. I swirled the glass gently, watching the little foreign particles waltz in the amber liquid. Zetro whatever it was. The anonymous caller had promised it'd turn me into a suggestible signing machine. Charming. You're absolutely right about savoring whiskey, I said lightly, raising it just enough to torment them. Margaret always said patience makes everything taste better. Rick's eye twitched. Dad, you've been talking for 10 minutes. The whiskey really is getting warm. Time flies when you're spinning stories about the son who's currently plotting your financial annihilation. Did I mention how tiny you were? I asked cheerfully, glass still hovering just shy of my lips. Barely 6 pounds, but with the strongest grip I'd ever felt. Emma, losing patience, shot up like a jack-in-the-box. She glided behind my chair, hands clamping down on my shoulders with loving wife energy, though the grip was closer to hostage negotiator. Jonathan, you're such a wonderful storyteller, she purred through gritted teeth. Why don't we toast to Rick's birth? Then you can continue. Of course. A toast. To birth, betrayal, and a slow, chemically assisted exit from this life. Cheers, everyone. Her fingers pressed into my shoulders like she was kneading dough, except the bread in question was her crumbling life plan. Desperation radiated off Emma like cheap perfume at a nightclub. Your mother said you'd be stubborn from day one, I mused, ignoring her claws digging in. She was right. Once you set your mind on something, nothing could stop you. Shame you used it for fraud instead of, I don't know, a career. Rick's composure cracked, like Poundland crockery. Dad, please, just one sip, then tell us about Mom. Oh, bless him. He still thought this was about the whiskey. The thing about stubbornness, I continued, glass still perfectly untouched, is that it can be a virtue or a vice. Margaret always wondered which one you'd pick. Now we have our answer. Vice every bloody time. Silence. Well, except for Maria in the kitchen, clinking dishes like background music to my personal Shakespearean tragedy. I think, I said slowly, Margaret would be heartbroken to see what you've done. Rick's face drained quicker than a student loan on payday. What do you mean by that? Before I could respond, the front door thundered with 3 sharp knocks. Not the friendly Amazon delivery sort. No, this was the authoritative variety. Police. Open up. Rick dropped his glass, shattering it all over the marble. A lovely metaphor, really. His future, lying in shards, soaking in booze. The metallic click of handcuffs followed, echoing like the world's most satisfying punctuation mark. Richard Miller, the senior officer said, his voice seasoned with decades of family betrayal bingo. You're under arrest for attempted poisoning, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse. Well, someone had been doing their homework. This is insane. Rick squeaked, voice cracking like he was 13 again, and discovering deodorant. My father's confused. Dad, tell them. Emma, meanwhile, began boiling over like a kettle someone forgot to switch off. Tell them this is a mistake, Jonathan. Oh, darling. If only denial counted as a legal defense. I stood, finally, holding my untouched whiskey glass like it was Exhibit A at a West End show. The sediment swirled inside, foreign, poisonous, and as subtle as Emma's fake smile. There's no mistake, I said. This contains Zatra. My son tried to turn me into a compliant, drooling pen monkey, so I'd sign away my life's work. Charming, isn't it? The junior officer held it up to the chandelier light, as if auditioning the poison for its close-up. Yep, that's not whiskey sediment. That's chemical betrayal. The senior cop gave Rick the good news. Attempted poisoning carries 8 to 12 years minimum. Rick sagged like a cheap suit. But the loan sharks, they'll kill me in 11 days. Emma hissed like an annoyed cat. Rick, shut up. But Rick was well past dignity. Dad, they threatened to break my legs. Then kill me. I had no choice. Oh, you had choices, I said dryly. You just chose the worst possible ones. Gambling over family. Crime over work. Patricide over common sense. Bold strategy, son. Shame it didn't pay off. The cops exchanged a sort of look that said, yep, add this one to the highlight reel of stupidity. Emma Miller, the junior officer announced, you're also under arrest. Cue Emma, clawing at the table, like she'd just discovered gravity. I didn't plan anything. Rick forced me. I'm a victim too. The senior cop's expression was the same one you'd use when hearing, my dog ate my homework. Ma'am, you researched his preferences, bought the poison, and played waitress. That's not victimhood. That's project management. As they led the two of them away, Rick twisted back with one final guilt trip. Dad, how could you do this to your own family? Mom would be heartbroken. I met his eyes, voice steady. Your mother valued honesty above comfort. And she'd never forgive what you tried to do tonight. Not even for you. Maria appeared, mask slipping for the first time, a cocktail of relief and sorrow on her face. She didn't need to say anything. Justice was served, though not the sort Rick and Emma had ordered. Blue and red lights painted the mansion walls as the police cars pulled away, making the dining room look like a crime scene disco. Appropriate, really. I stood alone among shattered crystal and spilled poison, the ghosts of betrayal still hanging in the air. And for just a moment, I felt Margaret beside me, not forgiving, not soft, but proud. Because she'd have done the exact same thing. My phone buzzed with a text from the senior officer. Processing will take 2 to 3 hours. We'll need your statement. Of course. Family night wasn't over yet. Apparently, I still had paperwork to do. Because nothing screams justice quite like forms in triplicate. Rick and Emma, once the poster children for smug dinner parties, now sat in separate holding cells. Their designer clothes looked especially tragic against the charming shade of institutional gray walls. Nothing like watching a Gucci belt clash with government-issue linoleum to remind you that karma does, in fact, have a sense of humor. Through the reinforced glass, I watched Rick pacing like a zoo exhibit nobody bought tickets for. Every few minutes he'd glance at me with that look, somewhere between "help me, Dad," and "please ignore the attempted patricide." Subtle as a sledgehammer, really. Detective Harrison set down his coffee like it was evidence itself. "Mr. Miller, walk me through the Zetrulum again. How did you know what to look for?" "Anonymous tip," I said, because apparently my life had turned into a budget crime drama where mystery callers save pensioners from being chemically neutered. "Any idea who this person might be?" I thought of Maria, darting around the dining room with the energy of someone trying to keep her job while also not watching me be poisoned. But out loud? No idea. But whoever it was saved my life. Emma's sobs echoed through the station like a badly tuned alarm clock. "This is all Rick's fault," she wailed. "I only went along because I was scared." Detective Harrison raised one eyebrow, the universal expression for "I've heard this excuse 17 times before lunch." Fear doesn't usually excuse conspiracy to commit elder abuse, especially when we've found the pre-signed power of attorney and business transfer documents in your husband's office. "How long?" I asked out of morbid curiosity. "Attempted poisoning? 8 to 12. Add fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse? He's looking at 15 to 20. She'll get less if she cooperates, but she's still cooked." 15 to 20. My son was going to spend his 40s in prison. Not because of injustice, not because of some tragic accident, but because he couldn't gamble like an adult and lose gracefully. I raised him for 20 years, taught him right from wrong, and he picked wrong with the enthusiasm of someone buying concert tickets. Through the glass, Rick slumped on his bench, head in his hands. Then he spotted me. "Dad." His voice boomed like some cheap theater production. "Please. I'll pay it all back. I'll go to treatment. I'll change." Ah yes, the greatest hits album of empty promises. I'd heard this track before. Spoiler, it never charted. Detective Harrison, bless him, sipped his coffee. "He's going to keep trying to manipulate you." Standard pattern. I know. His mother always said I was too soft on him. Not your fault, sir. Adults make their own choices. True. Though my son's choices included poisoning me with a chemical that sounded like a shampoo brand. But sure, choices. Emma appeared at her own glass window, streaked makeup giving her the aura of a tragic war bride. "Jonathan, please, tell them I was coerced. I never wanted to hurt you." The same desperation Rick used to muster when he'd stolen from my wallet as a teenager. It was like déjà vu, only with handcuffs and fewer hormones. Neither of them took responsibility. Both blamed circumstance, gravity, the weather, anything but themselves. I leaned forward, deciding something important. Detective, the anonymous person who warned me risked everything. If I knew who they were, I'd want to help them. Understood. If they come forward, we'll make sure their cooperation is noted. The station's fluorescent lights hummed above me, harsh and unforgiving, like a budget truth serum. No chandeliers here, just buzzing tubes that made everything uglier. My family's perfect little mask had fallen off, leaving nothing but the raw stupidity underneath. 3 hours later, after paperwork thicker than a Victorian novel, I finally stood in the lobby. An officer dangled my car keys. "Ready to go home, Mr. Miller? We'll drive you back to Brooklyn." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "I need to make one call." The phone rang twice. Then a familiar voice answered, warm, steady, no longer wearing the disguise of fear. "This is Maria Gonzalez." "How are you, Mr. Miller?" Maria. Relief hit me like whiskey without the poison. "You saw everything and still found the courage to save me. I couldn't let them hurt you. You treated me like a person. They treated me like furniture." And there it was. The line that cracked me. Sitting in the police lobby, nearly midnight, I cried for the first time since Margaret's funeral. Not out of grief, but out of sheer gratitude that someone still had decency in a world where my son thought parricide was a clever financial plan. Maria, how did you know about the Zatra, the documents, all of it? 3 days ago, I was cleaning Mr. Rick's office. They planned it in front of me. As if I couldn't understand English. As if I didn't count. And that really summed it all up. To them, she was invisible. To me, she was the reason I was still alive. The casual cruelty stung worse than the attempted poisoning, which is saying something. I mean, Zetrolum in my whiskey? Fine, expected. But discovering my own son thought human dignity was optional based on immigration status? That cut deep. Turns out Rick wasn't just morally bankrupt. He'd gone into liquidation. Maria explained how they'd sat there planning it like Bond villains without the charm, discussing doses, hiding papers, timing the whole production, as if I were too daft to notice. Emma, of course, had even Googled my favorite foods. Imagine plotting murder and still worrying about the appetizers. 5 stars for presentation, 0 for ethics. You risked your job, possibly deportation, to warn me, I said. Not a stranger, she corrected softly. A good man. Reminded me of my father. Someone who said please and thank you actually looked at me when speaking. And there it was. The dagger disguised as kindness. I'd spent a whole evening being treated like a walking checkbook by my own flesh and blood. Yet the maid, the invisible furniture in their eyes, was the only one who remembered I was human. The officer gestured that my ride was ready. But this mattered more. Maria, do you have another job lined up? No, sir. After tonight, I doubt the Millers will be giving references. I own 7 restaurants in Brooklyn, I said, as casually as one might mention they keep bees. I need a manager for my newest location. Someone trustworthy. Someone with your spine. Silence. Then her voice trembling. Mr. Miller, you don't have to. This isn't charity. I hire people who do the right thing when no one's watching. Tonight, you proved you're exactly that person. Salary starts at 60 grand. Health benefits. Profit sharing after a year. Oh, and free chips. Her sobs crackled through the phone line. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll start Monday, 10 a.m., Crown Heights. I'll be there personally. I promise I won't poison the welcome drinks. The officer politely pretended he wasn't overhearing a life being salvaged while waiting to drive me home. Address exchanged, start date set, moral compass restored. The ride back to Brooklyn was quiet. For the first time all week, quiet felt good. Streetlights shone over real neighborhoods, people working night shifts, people actually paying their bills instead of trying to kill their fathers for inheritance. Call me old-fashioned, but I'll take the bin men over a fraudulent stockbroker any day. My house, modest, unpretentious, and crucially not cursed with marble floors, welcomed me like an old friend. Photos still littered the fridge. Rick through the years, Emma on their wedding day, Margaret, beautiful as ever. I pulled Rick's picture off the fridge. Didn't tear it up, didn't spit on it. Just placed it in a drawer. Some memories deserve keeping, but not front and center like a daily reminder of disappointment. Emma's photo joined him. Margaret stayed. She earned that spot with honesty, not paperwork and poison. On the kitchen calendar, I wrote, Maria, 10 a.m. Monday. New beginning. Below it, I nearly added, do not get poisoned again, but decided that went without saying. Outside, Brooklyn hummed. Honest, imperfect, messy, but real. Margaret always said, the best employees are the ones who do the right thing for the right reasons, even if it cost them. She'd have adored Maria. Probably would have baked her a pie. My phone buzzed with a final text from Detective Harrison. Both suspects charged. Trial in August. Your testimony crucial. I switched off the lights, climbed the stairs, and for the first time in ages, felt like I might actually sleep. Upstairs, Margaret's perfume still sat on the dresser, quietly reminding me that love isn't just flowers and anniversaries. It's protecting people from harm. Even when that harm comes wearing your son's face. Especially then. So yes, justice was served. Family collapsed. Morality salvaged. And I, against all odds, survived dinner.